What is your most terrifying animal encounter? When I was 12, a young stallion decided he wanted to play with me and almost killed me. He kicked and bit me and tried to trample me. He was my pet and was only treating me the way he'd treat a peer. I even knew that while it was happening. I made a huge mistake by turning my back on him while he was playful. He bit me and pulled me down. Knocked me down a couple of more times with a forefoot when I tried to get up. Reared up over me to stamp me a couple of times too. Still have the scar on my leg, and that was a long time ago. Literally pee myself during. My dad basically saved my life by chasing him off. His response was, "That was close. What did you learn?" I moved to Colorado. About a month and one night I had gone to bed and woke up on severe pain hours later. I felt nausea, throbbing pain around my abdomen. My muscles and back ached. I turned on the lights, and I had in my sleep rolled over a black widow spider and crushed it to death, which at some point had bit me. Its carcass lay in my bed. I freaked out, called 911, and put it in a mason jar so they thought I wasn't crazy. I was brought to the hospital where they treated me with pain management medications. The venom continued to spread. Every muscle ached and felt as though my body was being crushed. It soon began to get hard to breathe and my blood pressure became irregular. The morphine has me drifting in and out of sleep. I prayed to God, who hours earlier I wasn't even sure I believed in. 12 hours I discharged. The venom ran its course for about 4 days, and the bite site intermittently itched for weeks. For the next year or two I had anxiety trying to go to sleep and reoccurring nightmares of the experience. Frick black widow spiders. When I was young, I went fishing with my dad and my best friend. We waded out through some deeper water to reach the shallow sandbar, where we fished for quite a while. The tide came in, and the water that had been just above my ankles was now above my waist. Suddenly a large shark, about 7-8 feet, crashed through a school of mullet only a few feet away from me. Dad saw it, my best friend saw it, and for a second we all three just kind of froze with our mouths hanging open. Quietly, calmly, Dad told us to walk back to shore, splashing as little as possible. We did, but the tide had come in, and I wasn't as tall as the other two guys. The deeper water between the sandbar and shore reached their chests, but I could hardly keep my head above water while my feet barely bounced along the bottom, and I struggled to hold my fishing rod up out of the water. I was completely helpless. While we knew that a hungry shark was swimming somewhere in the area, it felt like a scene out of a nightmare, trying to run from an invisible monster, but my feet could barely touch the ground and I was hardly moving. I know, and even knew in that moment, that I had little chance of being eaten by a shark, especially one who is focused on fish. Still, if I ever were to be attacked, that was the moment, and I was utterly defenseless. A few years later, a man was killed just a few miles away when he jumped off his dock and into the path of a large bull shark that was chasing mullet. I'm from Florida and I was volunteering at a local nature conservancy. One of our tasks was to remove fallen logs that were blocking up a creek after a big storm. The creek was about chest deep, 15 feet wide, and opaque brown. Many Florida freshwater ways are browns BC of tannins leached into the river from trees. As I'm moving logs I notice a 12 featuring alligator on the embankment I hadn't noticed before. It then slid into the creek I was in. I was with a land manager who was moving logs with me, and a herpetologist who was in the canoe. I asked them what to do and they responded, "Well, those logs aren't gonna move themselves, and that gator's probably just trying to get away from us." Lol, you'd have to had paid me a large sum of money to be in a creek where gators are even seen frequently. You volunteering to stay in one with a 12-footer is crazy. I've been woken up by a bear sniffing my head once. Was cowboy camping, no tent, in Laurel Canyon in Yosemite once, when I hear something sniff right next to my head. My sleep-addled brain thinks it's a ranger on a horse telling me to move my camp. Had hiked about 20 miles that day. You have to be at least 4 miles into the canyon to camp, and I wasn't 100% sure I'd made it far enough since it was dark when I set up camp. Anyways, I say just 1 second, sit up, grope for my flashlight and turn it on to see a black bear a couple feet away. I holler, he tears off. I get out and empty my bladder, and try to fall back asleep until I hear him coming around again. I make a bunch more noise, decide I'm not getting any more sleep, break camp and slowly night hike until the sun rises. At the time I was working until 1 AM so I wouldn't get home until 2 or so. I opened the door to the house and felt what I thought was a breeze come by my leg. I don't really pay attention. Walk over to my desk, put my keys down and turn the light on. Right when I do so, there are 2 possums in the act of mating in the middle of my kitchen. They screamed. I screamed and we began the 3-hour dance of getting them out of my house. I ended up trapping them in a dog cage and dumping them out in the middle of my backyard. Once I tried to chase a possum off my lawn and it started chasing me back, so that was pretty startling. That was the time me and a buddy were camping a little outside town and could hear coyotes howling from what sounded like all around us. Coyotes always sound a lot closer than they are. They sound like they're all around you and really close, but in reality they are probably a good quarter mile away. Growing up, my grandma babysat me. She lived with my uncle. He had a Rottweiler who was very friendly. One day, when I was 9-10, I decided I wanted to pretend to be a wrestler. I did this by putting white masking tape on my hands and arms. I ended up fighting stuffed animals and all that. When I got tired, I just grabbed some action figures and went to the carport, which had deer stands. This was where the Rottweiler also slept, so the dog was asleep when I got there. I started playing with the toys. A few minutes later I heard the dog stirring. I pay no mind to it. I then hear growling. I turn around and the dog is growling at me. I try to let her know it is me, but she is still growling. I then slowly back away and she lunges at me. Being the somewhat smart kid I was, I noticed immediately she was going for my arms. I rip off the masking tape, throw it at the dog, and run back into the house. Avoided that dog for days until I was asked to feed her. She was friendly again. I lived in an old farmhouse that was set on an overgrown market garden. The place was overrun by rats, but I never saw them. You could just hear them rustling in the walls. I didn't want to poison them because I was afraid that one would die in the walls and stink the place out. One night I went to bed and turned out the light. Immediately I realized I was thirsty and turned the light back on and stepped out to the kitchen. I interrupted a giant rat as he made his way across the kitchen floor. Obviously he had heard me go to bed and figured that I was down for the night and the coast was clear. I don't know who was more startled, him or me, but I'll never forget the look of malevolent intelligence in his eyes. We bolted in opposite directions. After that I set traps in the kitchen at night. When I was just 5 years old, my neighbor had a Doberman who was usually very friendly dog. However, one day I go into his backyard to ride one of his bikes that he usually lets me ride. As I was exiting the backyard, the Doberman jumped on me and knocked me to my butt and pinned me down, staring me in the face, growling viciously. Eventually when neighbor comes out of the house and yelled at him, "Damien, get back in here." I don't know if that dog ever wanted to really kill me or just scare me. As an adult, I was taking my Welsh Terrier for a walk. 2 Dobermans with owner nowhere in sight started stalking us from opposite directions. My dog, 22 lbs of him, started growling and showing teeth. He is very friendly with friendly dogs. A car came by and saw what was happening, offered us a lift away from there. I was very thankful. Went to war with a huntsman spider and a mucade centipede simultaneously in my shower in Japan. Yes, I was naked. Yes, I won. I did field work back and forth between the US, UK and East and Southern Africa for 10 years, and in that time period, spent a good chunk of my life living at remote base camps, so I have a few crap yourself moments that I can list off the top of my head. 1. I was chased by an elephant. It was worse as she had a calf. 2. I know for a fact that I was stalked by at least 2 big cats twice. One being a leopard, as it was the only large species around at the field site, and the other was most likely a rogue male lion, given that one was seen close by earlier and was known to hang out in the area. 3. This one occurred in Alaska. It was my day off and I was reading in the main tent as everyone went into town, and I turned around only to find a moose cow and calf about 5 meters away from me. 4. This is the most recent event. We were having a party one night and I guess someone forgot to shut the kitchen door. I woke up in the morning hungover and decided to make coffee. The rubbish bag was underneath the sink and I heard something in it. I was directly over it, and I saw coils within striking distance from a Mozambique spitting cobra. That was a near crap yourself moment. 5. 2 spotted hyenas broke into our camp, killed a few dogs and then went over to a few tents, including mine, and pushed their muzzle through. The most surreal thing about that was, if you know anything about spotted hyenas, they actually make a noise every now and then, or every freaking night, called a whoop. It's insanely loud. One of them actually made that noise. It hurt my ears, but interestingly enough, it turns out that there is actually a growl that is always made directly after the whoop. So, really close up it sounds like whoop, grrrr, and so on. I have a few other stories but none of them were as terrifying as those or made me feel that my life was directly threatened. As a kid, I spent a lot of time with my babysitter's kids at their house and they had a Sheltie dog. This is a smallish, friendly breed but my babysitter's son was a nightmare to it and would do crap like chase it around with a Nerf gun or tackle it and was basically just abusing this animal while his family did nothing. I was 7 and couldn't do much and TBH the family had worse abuse going on than a kid terrorizing a dog, so I kept quiet about it. One day, a fly is just chilling over my head, very clean household lol, and the dog starts growling at it and ends up mauling me to get to it. It ate part of my upper lip. I can't say 100% that it ate my lip but this dog's face was in my face and we never found the missing chunk of flesh it gauged out. So I always just say it bit me because that's the most sense I can make out of the blur of oh my god dog mouth and teeth and fur in my face. A triangular chunk of face and lip just gone. Worst part is I'm afraid of shelters now, which is embarrassing. Second worst part is I kept hanging out with the babysitter's kids after they gave up the dog and like a year later they revealed they just gave it to their cousins. They revealed this by taking me to said cousin's house where the retrained dog was. This was top 10 anime betrayal level crap. That's so fricked up that they made you meet it again. A pack of swans was hunting poor little me when I was 9 years old. You don't frick with swans. I was cycling up a mountain in the Scottish Highlands. My gran lives there, and as I went round a corner, I came face to face with a huge Highland cow which was running down the mountain the opposite way. Instead of jumping off the path I thought the cow was be friendly and edge over to let me by. Big mistake. It threw its head as I went by, almost impaling me and throwing me off the path and into a 20-foot tumble down the mountain. I outran a swarm of bees. I was young and in Straya, and we lived on the front of a farm. I went exploring a lot. It was really cool. I found a bee's nest in a huge fallen tree. I had watched a lot of cartoons, and wanted to know if the bees would come out in an arrow and get me if I whacked it with a stick. So I did. They did not. I was disappointed and climbed around the fallen tree. The bees do attack, just not immediately, and not in an arrow, in a cloud. Suddenly they were all around me. I sprinted home, about 2k, and if I slowed down the bees caught up. I ran into our yard and shut the gate, thinking I was safe. I wasn't, obviously, and got stung a few times. I deserved it though. Don't go beating up animal homes. Went swimming at the beach and decided to race my mate out to the shark net boys. I'm 5 meters away, giving it my all when I slapped my hand down into the water for my next stroke and hit something real squishy. I stopped and looked up to find I'd booped a box jellyfish square on the top of the thing. Noped out of there so hard. The worst bit was I didn't even win the race. You have been visited by the magical sugar jar Puggo. He'll only share his sweetener if you comment sugar please. MR Papa, if you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.